Okay, good Monday afternoon. I'm going to start off this call basically referencing I'm depressed after the Patriots lost yesterday. And I know my guest is a little bit down because his Steelers lost yesterday, and we're not going to cover that in the podcast, but I just want to put it on the table. So today's topic is actually going to be centered around the whole concept of lazy leadership. And I have a guest from North Carolina. He's a leadership coach. He's the founder of a company called Intent Consulting. He's the author of 5 books, the most recent of which is called Be a J.E.D.I Leader, Not a Boss, which I thought was a catchy title. His name is Omar Harris. And Omar, welcome. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you, Dave. Very happy to be here as well.
Excellent. So you're down in North Carolina. I'm going to be going down. I'm going
Yes,
to be
sir.
going through the Carolinas later this week, but I'll be in South Carolina to visit my son. So
Oh, nice.
if I was driving, I'd stop by and see you. You might want to lock your door. So, you know what stood out to me is the title "boss" in your book's title. Because I hate that word, and I think you probably do too. But it reminded me of I think the first time I became anybody's in quotes boss was when I was in my early 30s. And one of my employees, her husband's grandfather passed away, and there was a wake for the gentleman. And I actually went. Actually, she had just left the company, and I had showed up at the wake, and then she went out of her way to introduce me to everybody in there, which was awkward because we're at a wake and I don't really know anybody. But she kept introducing me as her old boss, and then finally I said, "Can you please stop calling me that?" There was something about it. One, the word "old" bothered me, and then two, I didn't like the word "boss." It just bothered me. And I watched something that you posted. I don't know when it was, Omar, but you had talked about there's actually a negative connotation associated with that word that has like a really bad meaning here. So I'll kind of start with that and let you take off.
Well, like you, I never took to being called a boss. I never wanted to be called a boss. I never wanted to be anyone's boss. I didn't think that, the bossing could get me where I wanted to get to in my career. I thought it could work for some people, but I knew it wasn't going to work for me. And as I've learned more about leadership management and, as I've been researching and writing my books, you learn things that just are surprising to you. Like when I'm researching the last book, I'm looking into, systemic injustices and inequities and all these things and the confluence of these factors and also looking at business. And I learned that the word boss is actually from a root base, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, base or base in Dutch, which means master. And so really it was a clever way. It's a clever way to get people to call you master. When you say boss, you're really saying the root of that word is master. Wow. And we know, masters and slaves, and, I think it comes with a lot of baggage to that word. And so, but then I see, everyone trying to aspire to be a boss and we have the boss baby and we have all this boss stuff in our culture. And I like to distinguish. Being your own boss is fine, but you should never aspire to boss anyone else. Right. So that's kind of the distinction I make is be your own boss. Great. Be the biggest boss you can be for yourself, but don't apply that nonsense to anyone else's life, please.
You brought up diversity, equity, inclusion. You do a ton of work in that space.
Yes.
I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about that. And especially now, I would think over the last 18 months, that type of work and these topics are more, I don't want to say more relevant, but like they're in everyone's face in a way that they've maybe never been before. What are you experiencing there? And are we handling it right? I just want to, as an outsider that doesn't specialize in that area, I feel like as a country, or even when I go into companies, and I've worked with companies in the past, I feel like we're checking boxes. I don't know that we're really fixing anything or addressing what's really going on, like light, quick fixes to complex problems. I want your take on that. Maybe you can kind of get us going.
I think it goes back to the topic of today's conversation, which is lazy leadership. And lazy leadership is, okay, let me do something superficial that I can at least point to publicly to show that I'm doing something. So that could be as simple as announcing a commitment to, HBCUs, or announcing a commitment, a 10-year commitment to blah, 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 blah. When you actually start tracking the dollars, you see the money's not actually leaving the coffers of these companies with the same vigor that the announcements came out. So you begin wondering, is this a PR stunt? or are these companies actually doing, walking the talk? You will pay not only a reputational cost, but you will pay a financial cost for your lack of action. It's better to not say anything at all than to say something and not do anything, I guess is what I'm trying to say around that issue. Now, in my space, and forgive the term, but what a lot of the real DEI practitioners are facing today is something we're calling white fatigue, which is we have a lot of well-meaning people who kind of lean into the space when it was hot and a hot topic last year. And when it didn't go away overnight, or when the issue kept being raised and people kept bringing it up and the temperature kept staying at a certain level, people were like, well, can't we move on from this? Why can't we move on from this?
Right.
It's the same thing like this, these attacks on, and I hate this sort of word, critical race theory. I don't even know who invented that word, but these attacks on history, these attacks on trying to actually tell the truth about what happened in America. It's the same thing. It's like, why can't we just move on from that? We didn't do it. It wasn't us. So therefore, we feel bad about it, but we don't want to dwell on it. Let's move forward. This is not who we are. And any society, any business, any individual who forgets where they come from is destined to be lost forever. It's only when you embrace the brutal side of your history that you can actually evolve and improve. I point to examples like Germany. Germany's a fantastic example of this. After World War II, societally, they will not allow themselves to forget the sins of the past. It's like embedded in the DNA of the culture now, to an extent that Germany is one of the models of government in Europe now. Which, if you imagine 100 years ago or 50 years ago, saying that Germany was one of the top 2 countries in Europe, that would have been a scary thought. Right. But now, because they have embraced and they're not forgetting their history, and they're actually saying we need to atone for these sins, that's why we're seeing the improvement. And so I think that to go beyond lazy leadership and to go beyond box checking and all these types of things, leaders need to understand that this is long-term work. This is process by process, person by person, policy by policy, practice by practice. And it requires a great deal of resilience and a great deal of persistence and a great deal of commitment, all with the belief that by doing this work, we can unlock opportunities that we have been barring ourselves from because we haven't tapped into these spaces.
Go back to the lazy piece. It feels like, like a company might hire, I forget the name of the title you said, like a
DEI lead.
And they're there just to kind of, they're the hall monitor for the new policy. And
right.
And then to your point, it just because you have the position and you can show in your whatever on your intranet or your internet,
right.
Look what we're doing and look at this spend or all this junk or whatever. How could this be handled differently is the question. When you say person by person, I mean, here you and I, we've never actually face to face other than this. I don't know that you think the same way as the guy who lives next to you in your neighborhood. I can only relate or try to understand you and not make any assumptions that you think like him or her, right? Just like, so is it just a grassroots effort of let's just try to figure this out. Let's not make any assumptions.
Well, I think in an organization, actually the reverse is true. I think that we have to assume that injustices are happening. We have to assume that we have inequities. We have to assume that we're not capitalizing on diversity. We have to assume that people don't feel a sense of belonging. Only once you assume that there's a problem can you attack it.
Right.
And then you go find the proof. But you have to start with saying, rather than being denial and being defensive, you say, listen, I'm open to finding out that there might be something real in these spaces. And I'm also open to acting appropriately should I find out what is inhibiting us in these spaces. And I'm open to doing that for the long haul continuously until my customers, communities, the environment, and my employees tell me that I'm on the side of right. But until that happens, we have work to do. And I think and this is fundamental because we didn't do this work 100 years ago. Have we done the work 100 years ago or even 70 years ago when, after civil rights, we saw, desegregation happening in organizations. And if we had done that work when women came into the workforce and we created safe spaces for them, we didn't do this work. at those moments. So now we have to do it now. And better to do it now than wait till 2040 or 2000, whatever it is. We have to do it now. Or else companies that don't do it are not going, I predict, will not be in existence 8 years from now.
Yeah, I think the same would apply to, say, sexual harassment, or things that were tolerated for years or accepted as, oh, this is just kind of the norm when we go on our company trip.
Yeah.
And no one ever says anything. It takes me to a place where there's a fraudulent piece to it as well, where, oftentimes a leader will, hey, these are our core values, or this is the purpose of our company, or we believe in this or that. And then they don't live it. And so people are smart, employees are smart, customers are smart, affiliates are smart. You can tell when somebody's full of shit, pardon my language, you can tell.
Yeah.
And so it's not only recognizing that maybe we're missing something, but it's not being proud of it. It's saying, look, I'm embarrassed that I don't know this, right? I mean, there's got to be a level of empathy and understanding and recognition.
Right. I mean, the best response is to say, I don't know, but I will find out. Sort of like what Adam Silver did, last year when, during the NBA bubble, when the gentleman was killed in Milwaukee, and the Milwaukee Bucks refused to play that night. He put in a statement that says, listen, I can't possibly understand, as in my being, what you're going through, but I intend to listen to all of your voices and hear all of you so that I can incorporate that into our action plan. You know what I'm saying? And so it's leaning in with that intention, which is, empathy is, I use an acronym: listening, understanding, and validating. So love. So you listen to understand, not to respond, and you understand to validate that experience. Listen, this is a real thing for you. You don't gaslight. You don't say, oh, that's not real. Bob is actually not a bad guy. He just, he sometimes, Bob is just that, Bob is Bob, it's just Bob.
Right.
And this is what we saw in the 90s with sexual harassment after Anita Hill, right? We saw every company put all their employees through sexual harassment training. Training is not the answer to these issues. Lazy leadership. What we're talking about here fundamentally is belief, bias, and behavior.
100%. You remind me of stuff like early on in my career, joining some large companies, I would see and hear what was actually going on off-site. I remember one woman sitting in a meeting and everyone knew what she was doing outside of work with other people in the office. And I just remember her getting up in front of the office talking about how in love with her husband she was. It was horrifying because everyone knew what she was doing, and she stood there as the whole staff right out of the gate. So no matter what you try to do from that point on is completely dismissed. You're either unaware or you're lying.
Well, see, it's a double standard, because we know that management has one standard and we have another standard. So you're training us, you're not training yourselves.
Yeah.
You're holding us accountable. You're not being held accountable. Only when external auditors come in, or there's a Justice Department investigation, or something happens externally where your investors become aware of the issue, that's only when senior managers will face any repercussions for non-action in these areas. But until then, it's like, let's train everybody else.
Yeah.
We're not the problem. The employees aren't the issue. It's the managers, it's the senior managers, and it's the executives who are getting away with all kind of nonsense, protected by contracts, by packages, by, whatever else it is. I mean, like, the greatest example is Carrie Tolstead, the head of retail banking at Wells Fargo during the whole scandal 4 or 5 years ago. She resigned and walked away with an $125 million golden parachute for defrauding millions of customers and leading to ultimately the firing of 5,000 employees. But the senior leader walked away with $125 million. That's the punishment for bad behavior for corporate executives. And that's the nonsense that people are not tuning into. And they're like, listen, if that's what we're signing up for, we're not going to sign up for that.
Yeah, no, I remember I read that. That's like well documented. It's disgusting.
Yeah,
It really is
yeah.
disgusting. But let's talk about the leaders themselves. I mean, I don't work. I know you've spent a lot of time in the
Yeah,
pharma space, huge
yeah.
companies. My space is more small to mid market. You know, a big client for me might be $1 billion. That's not big, maybe in the world that you're used to. But a lot of the people that end up in leadership didn't necessarily earn their way into leadership. Some of them
Right.
inherited their way in. They knew somebody. Maybe they were a top performer that got promoted.
Hmm.
You know, just right place, right time. Somebody else quit. We slide you over. And they're in it. Sometimes they're in it for the money, the title, the safety, you know, the
Hmm.
perceived stability, but they're not always in it to serve one. And the other thing I noticed, you talk a lot about believing in people, which I could not agree with more. I mean, I wouldn't
Hmm.
be able to do what I do if somebody didn't believe in me at one point.
Right.
I've had leaders say to me, well, these people can't really do this. I mean, they will train them, not
Right.
believing that the training will amount to anything because the people aren't as smart as them. But
Right.
that's not true. A lot of it is, I don't believe that it would work on me. I don't even believe in myself. So if I don't believe in myself, how can I believe or serve anybody else?
Exactly. And it comes down to what you're chasing and why you're chasing it. I mean, I think that, let's just break it down and be very, very simplistic and plain. If you told anyone that, listen, you do this thing for 5 years, you'll give $1 million, everybody will take that path. If there's an easy path to 5 to 1 million or to a better lifestyle, most of us are going to take that ticket. We're going to and so when you go into a corporation, the first thing you experience is the corporate parking lot. And that's the first area of an equity. You learn that executives get to sit up front, get to park up front. You're parked on the fifth floor or whatever floor of the parking garage, and you'll see the cars, Porsches, Jaguars, Mercedes Benz. You're seeing these cars, and you're driving whatever Honda Civic, whatever it is that you took from college, and you're starting it off, and you're like, you immediately begin to covet someone else's lifestyle. The moment you come into a corporation, from day one, it's kind of the carrot is like, listen, if you follow these instructions and keep your head down, you can be like me one day.
Yeah.
You too can achieve, front seat parking in a Mercedes Benz of your choice and this kind of house or whatever it is. And so that, for so long, that's been the incentive system that corporations are built on, not on higher purpose, not on the work we're actually doing, not on making things better, making the world better. It's been about, okay, how can I get that or get there? If that guy took 20 years, I'm going to take 15. If that guy took 15, I'm going to take 10. If that guy took 10, I want to do it in 7. This is what everybody who comes into a corporation is trying to hack. They're trying to hack their way to that level of status, not understanding what they're chasing, why they're chasing it, and what's going to happen, and then when they achieve that level.
Yeah.
And chasing that stuff does not get you where you want to get to in life. And I'm a personal example of this. I chased position, I chased title when I first came into corporation. I said, listen, I want to be a marketing director by the time I'm 30. Why marketing director? Because I knew the salary level of marketing director was X, and that's where I wanted to be at that time. I thought that would make me feel comfortable. I got there by 29. At 29 years old, I'm a business unit director in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm living in a penthouse apartment, 2 floors, 4 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, marble everywhere. I'm like, I've made it. And I was the most miserable I've ever been in my entire life, Dave.
Why?
And I was miserable because my home life wasn't good.
Mm.
My work life was great, but my home life was not good.
Mm.
I was like making magic happen every day at work, and at home I was not doing so great. And so 2 years later, I became the youngest senior marketing director in history, managing $4.5 billion brand. I'm 31 years old. I've got, everything. Still not happy. Still not content with my life. And I'm like, listen, this more thing, chasing more is not going to make me happier. I'm only happy when I'm leading others and helping others develop and helping other people get to where they want to get. That's the only thing that I take any satisfaction from on this 7-year climb is basically I did it the right way, and I have put people in position to be successful. And that's what I actually care about.
What is the resignation rate right now this year, did you say?
Well, I know right now, I mean, the second quarter, 11.5 million people resigned from the workforce. It's the first time in a long time that we've had more resignations than we have actual jobs available. So there's 10.8 million jobs open and 11.8 million people out of the workforce. Doesn't make any sense. There's a million more jobs than there are people who are out of jobs. It's a crazy phenomenon right now because people are also doing the same kind of examination I was doing, which is, okay, this is for the birds. Like there's got to be a better way for this. There's got to be more meaning behind this.
Yeah, when I think about my career, one of the favorite CEOs that I ever reported to was the most understated guy I've ever met in my life. You wouldn't have even known that he owned the company. He didn't dress like it. He didn't have a fancy car. I think he drove a used Camaro from the 70s. He was like in the 80s. You last guy you'd even think to be in the car too. Looked like an accountant. And, his whole thing is I am just like everybody else, and he acted like everybody else. But I've worked for people in my life where it's all about the car and the multiple homes, and there's a celebrity status to them. The best leaders that I know, understated. The worst, celebrities, and people treat them like celebrities, and they start to believe that crap. But for me, it just, I think you told a story about early on in your career, but like for me, it's always come down to, do I feel good when I walk into this place? Do I enjoy my time when I'm with you? And if I'll walk. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the money or the title or the consequences of walking. If I don't feel good in your presence, and I can't, and I have the best intentions, but I feel dirty around you, I'm gone. And so I wonder if that has a lot to do with this all these people not going back to work. I think the lazy way to look at it is, well, they're just going to sit home and collect. I mean, it's just easier to do nothing. I don't agree with that. I've got a client right now, they've got multiple 6-figure jobs wide open. Because people don't want to go do it. So I don't feel good. I don't trust that I'm going to go there and enjoy your environment.
It's toxicity. Like, why would I, just like we've learned over time about the toxins in our foods, and everybody has made some sort of shift away from, at least your awareness has shifted. That things are bad now that you didn't know were bad maybe 15, 20 years ago. We know what's in our food. We're reading ingredients, we're reading labels. The transparency that has always been there, we're actually paying attention to. Because we're paying attention now, we have choice. When you start paying attention, you start having more choices. You're like, listen, I can choose to buy this thing that has all these toxins in it, or I can choose to buy this thing and maybe a little bit more expensive, but I won't get cancer in 20 years. So it's about choices. We have less smokers in America than ever before. I mean, we've evolved past that thing. So these are trends and evolutions people have to pay attention to, because people are getting smarter. They're tuning in. They're seeing what's going on. They're seeing how the game is played. They're seeing who's getting incentivized and who's losing. And they're saying, listen, if those are the rules of the game, and I have to play that way, then I'd rather do. If you go on TikTok or go on Instagram for 20 minutes, you will learn about 7 or 8 side hustles that will get you $40,000 to $50,000 a year every 20 minutes you spend on TikTok or Instagram. So is it true? Is it real? Can make people make that kind of money? I don't know, but it looks a lot more appealing to me than drudging in or being on endless Zoom calls or dealing with that jerk boss who only cares about themselves. It seems a lot more. I'd rather try that than to know I know what I'm going to get dealing with you.
Yep. So go back to I mean, I told you I'd be off on all these tangents. Go back to the inclusion piece. Obviously, I'm a white guy, middle-aged white guy. On paper, I had advantages. Not necessarily, maybe you had more than me. I don't even know. It sounds like your parents were more supportive than mine. That said, I guess it could be argued that I had more advantages. What do you think, like, if you talk to somebody like me, what's something that somebody like me should be thinking about as it relates to not only the Black community, but the Asian community, the gay community, the female, whatever? Like, what should I be thinking? And on top of that, if you went to the average, Black professional, Jewish professional, Asian, what should they be thinking? Like, are there misconceptions that I might be making, misconceptions even that you might be making? I'm all over the place. I told you.
No. I think that one misconception that one reality. Let's say we all have identities, right? We have ways of being. So the reality that you may live in is a reality where you are primarily focused on yourself, you're focused on your family, you're focused on and you've been able to focus on that primarily most of your life. You may have, in a typical sense, I'm not talking about your specific experience. I'm saying in a typical sense, your family by and large is pretty good. You may be dealing with some other demons in the family, like, the alcoholisms and the whatever else that attacks that people, regardless of your level of privilege or whatever it is, gambling, things of that nature. But you pretty much, when you grew up, it was kind of you and your family. You weren't thinking about other white families and other white people. You were just thinking about yourself. Other groups, we don't have the advantage of thinking about just ourselves. So my mother, every day when I left the house, she says, "You represent your race and you represent this family." That's heavy. Now imagine being told that every day you left the house, from the time you were like in kindergarten to the time you went to college. So I'm holding more bricks than the average white person is holding.
Yeah.
Because I can't just represent myself. I have to represent an entire race of people.
Can I catch you off? So as it relates to that, is that coming from a place, this is how I'm hearing it. Your mother's saying, don't embarrass us.
Right.
Don't embarrass us. Don't do anything to cause anyone else to judge or predetermine who you are. Is that where
don't set us back.
Don't set us back.
Don't set us back. We cannot afford setbacks as a community. As a community, we cannot afford setbacks. We're trying to advance. We've only been free since 1865 and really free since 1965. So we don't have the benefit of 300 years in America to build our whatever it is. We have had less time to get to where we want to get to. And so every generation that comes forward has to be better than the last in our community. It's the same thing with any immigrant family, any immigrant community is the same way. That's why the immigrant family parents push their kids to be doctors and lawyers. They're trying to advance in one generation. Yeah. They're trying to come up in a single generation, whereas and on the other side, it's more, you have more freedom. Listen, I can do more stuff. I don't have to be shifted into these areas. I don't have to be as successful necessarily, but I may choose to be successful. But if I'm not successful, it's not going to be the end of the world. Whereas in other lived experiences, you have a pressure on you to be successful. That's not only that's cultural, as well as parental, and that is something that is quite different that people don't realize. Which is why when you see someone who looks like me, who's risen to a certain level in a corporation, the path they took to get here was probably not like the path I took to get here. Let's say we're at the same level. We're both VPs at a given corporation. Omar and Dave, we're here. We're buddies. We're working together. But our paths to where we got to, or what we had to swallow, or what we went through, were probably very, very different experiences. And I think the more we understand those differences, the more we begin to appreciate the necessity for different types of inclusion, where we can't just like say, this company embraces everybody, but then the policies and procedures and everything you see doesn't show that. For example, we're an open and inclusive culture. A handicapped person comes in, they can't work because they don't have proper equipment to do their job, which means you didn't think about me when you designed this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Leaning into, and there's plenty of identities that I don't understand as well. And so my job is to understand these identities. The moment the pronoun game changed, where I was like, oh, I need to understand the they them pronoun. I don't know anything about that. Yeah. Let's lean into it. I didn't say, oh, it's so stupid that people would call themselves a they. I said, people, this is how they want to identify. I need to understand that. So I started reading books and articles and everything I could to understand that the non-binary mindset. So I'm going to encounter these individuals. I want to be able to embrace them and let them know that I have done some basic level of outreach to understand. It's sort of like when you go to a foreign country, if you don't adapt, you die in a foreign country. And because I've lived in Turkey and Indonesia and Brazil, I understand this. But there's a lot of people who haven't lived somewhere else. So you don't know that process of having to adapt and assimilate to a given culture, which is what we make everybody do when they come into our corporations. We force everyone to assimilate to our standards and our approach and our culture, and that's wrong. We should be more open and flexible to embracing what they're bringing in to our environment, and not just saying, listen, we're the best, you have to be one of us. No, we get better when we embrace everybody's diversity coming in the door.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing I would add to that, though, and you tell me what you think of this, is I feel like no matter who you are, where you're from, and I coach and train people from all different backgrounds as well.
Right.
And I did a keynote for a company that flew in people from all over the world, Southeast Asia, India, Brazil. It was awesome. And I remember before I was in there, the COO of the company, he said, it's a tough crowd. Everybody's coming from a different place. So when I did the talk, I really tied the talk into basic human, needs, like values and the way we treat each other and the way we respect or don't respect each other. And the entire crowd was excellent. They could not have been more open. And I wonder, as companies, it's not about who we are, and this is what we stand. These are our badges and our whatever. But I think at the very least, I should let you know, Omar, these are the things we value here. From hard work to respect to honesty, we should all be able to rally around those things.
We should be able to, but the definition may not be the same.
Okay. Yep.
So hard work, and remember, what's in the baggage? If you have women and you have people of color, the definition of hard work for them is perfection.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because they can't afford not to be perfect. Because they're trying to take away excuses to not be promoted, because they believe in their heart of hearts that they're going to be passed over anyway. So it's always a surprise to a woman and a person of color when they're actually recognized without them having to do something special. It's always wow, you see me, you actually see what I'm doing and what I'm contributing. Whereas the Toms and the Tims and the Bills and the Bobs are just riding through the company, riding up. Those values translate differently depending on your lived experience and your identity. We have to recognize that those words don't mean the same thing as we think they mean. They're not universal. They're not universal. What hard work means. My sister and I watched a documentary on, Bangladeshi factory workers, and how the terrible conditions that they're going through, and the fact that they walk 20 miles just to get to the factory, and they make less than livable wages. That person's work ethic and the average American's work ethic.
Oh yeah. There's
no comparison.
I agree with you. I think we have to talk about, I always talk about things like responsiveness or respect. What does responsiveness mean to you? What does communication feel like when it's working to you?
Right.
Those are the types of things I'm interested in. But if we meet at that place, we have a chance.
Yes. If we can align on the definitions, then we have a chance. But don't assume that your definition of that word and my definition of that word are the same.
Right.
That this is we've done this for years. We've assumed for years that we had a similar understanding of these things, and we never had a similar understanding of these things. And now with the world being fractured and there being alternative facts to everything, we have to just check in more than ever before to make sure that when we say this, that people are hearing this, they're getting the same thing that I'm saying.
Yep.
Not interpreting it in a different way.
It just is disheartening, and I know it probably is for you too. As the years have gone on in my life, I always think, okay, we're getting over the hump, race-wise, for example. We're getting over the hump. But the hump to me is a political hump. As an individual, I don't feel it. I don't feel it with you on this call. I'm like, we're just two guys talking, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But there's part of me, and this is the jaded part of me, that I feel like there's a community in this country on both sides that there's the side that really deep down does not want it to get better, because if it gets better, we don't have anything to talk about.
Right.
And then if the other side feels like it actually believes that, they say, screw you. You know what? I'm going to pull the card out. I'm going to pull the race card out, for example, where it's I'm done fighting this BS fight with you.
Yeah.
And it's I'm nervous. I get to the point, are we ever really, as human beings, really wanting to fix this? Honestly, I get nervous about, why are we at this ridiculous point? Because of what? Money and politics and authority. Which, by the way, if you and I live great lives or not so great lives, we're probably going to get about 80 years in and we're going to be dead. And we're not taking anything with us. So what good is it to win these BS battles and to hurt people along the way? I just don't get it. I feel, and I'm off on a tangent, I realize, but I feel like there's part of us as people that don't want to fix it.
I think, once again, I always try to look at systems and look at, what the power of systems to structure beliefs and actions, right, and behaviors. And I talk about this a lot. So if you've ever seen me on a podcast, you're going to hear me say this thing, because I say it all the time. But the value system of the world is off. And I always go back to Maslow, and I always say, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you think about the bottom two levels of the pyramid, which are basic physiological needs and then safety needs.
Yep.
The definition of wealth in a modern society is the bottom two levels of the pyramid. More physiological needs taken care of and more safety needs. Not more love and belonging, not more esteem, and not more altruism. Our definition of wealth is here. So when we're chasing this and not chasing this, it obviously we're going to fight amongst ourselves for this, because there's a limited amount of this stuff. There's an unlimited amount of love and belonging, esteem, and altruism. There's a limited, finite amount of clothes, food, shelter, and security. There's finite. So that's, remember, supply and demand. Our capitalistic society is based on these principles. So we're trying to create demand for a lifestyle. And that is always, like we talked about earlier in this call, like the demand for that lifestyle is what drove people to go into corporations. Because they're like, listen, if I stay here long enough, play this game long enough, I will get the benefit of that lifestyle. And then I'm on easy street and I'm chilling out and I'm having a good time. But along the way, I become the worst version of myself. I become the purely toxic version of myself, because I'm chasing ego and not worrying about giving back to anybody. I'm only thinking about myself. And that goes for anybody, right? However, we're seeing younger generations who are putting greater meaning to love and belonging and esteem and altruism. So these movements are gaining steam. So I'm not as pessimistic. I think that, when the volume goes up on division, it just tells me that we're making progress on the other side. They wouldn't be turning the volume up to this level to try to get us divided if they didn't perceive that actually the things that are trying to unify us are making progress. I mean, technology, and they understand technology does this in a way that they can't fight, in technology and music, right? So there are people all around the world listening to rap music. There are people all around the world mimicking TikTok dances from all over the place. And no one cares what the person looks like. Right. It's just, we want to be a part of this thing. That's right. Cool. That thing is more powerful than the things that separate us.
Do you think it's a generational thing? I podcasted with Rick Cromie. He wrote a book called Gen Tech, and we podcasted maybe a month ago, and it's all about the personalities of each generation. How much being a boomer? No, I'm not a boomer. I think you're probably Gen X. Me as my guess. Like, are some of these older generations in that mental prison? Is that really?
Yeah, because we have a different context. Our context tells us that we can't trust the future. Yeah. Our context tells us that, I mean, I was watching a documentary a few weeks ago about on Netflix about 9/11, and it's 2021, so it's literally been 20 years. There are people who were born the year that 9/11 happened, versus us who were adults when 9/11 happened. Our view of the world at our age versus the person who was born in 2001 is going to be very different. They're not going to grow up as worried about the world as we are, because we were rocked by an event that tore us to our core, just like the boomers were rocked by the assassination of JFK and the civil rights protests and the riots, race riots. So they saw that, they lived through that. So they know that's possible. We lived through 9/11. We know it's possible. We haven't had this generation's 9/11 or catastrophic event yet. So until then, it's all hunky dory and looks great. Like, life is for the taking. We haven't seen the other side of of life. The other shoe hasn't dropped for these younger generations yet. But they're aware of it historically. They know it happened, but they didn't. One thing is living through something and feeling it emotionally. Other thing is reading about it in a history book, right?
Are the older generations, ourselves included, and I'm not necessarily lumping you and I into this, but people of our age and older, are we holding on to those fears? It's like there's an identity in holding on to these racist bias or fears or phobias or worries. Like that's who we are. We need to be this, and you people are forgetting about it. Is that
we're reflecting our experiences, and we're warning everybody else. We're warning it on both sides, because we're like, listen, you don't know what can happen. You don't know how bad it can get. You don't know that, you know, if it gets bad, you will be being sprayed by a water hose, and German shepherds will be nipping at your heels. You don't know how bad it can be in this country. We need to remind you that world is just it's right here, man. It's not that far away. It's just right here. You know, it's not that far away. So I think that the context is important. I think we play an important role in terms of reminding, but not. I think the point is to remind and to let people know what happened, but not to hold back progress.
I want to be respectful of your time here. I'm probably already going over with you, but you talk about toxicity, but and when I think of toxicity, I think of abuse of power and dictatorial leadership and all that. But I also think of it, the total other end of it, which is, you know, pretending nothing's wrong or being silent on something. And I think that may even be more defeating to people than anything else. Like I just, you know, we went through, without getting too political here, we went from one extreme to another in the White House. I don't know that either of them is bringing anyone together. You've got one just totally setting fires, and you've got another one sleeping while the fire is burning with whatever. And it's like, I think that we're like, who's driving this bus? And I'm sure you're dealing with this too. As I coach people and train people, I'm training an entire human being that's trying to make sense of this world now. I'm not just teaching them how to be a good leader anymore, how to be a effective salesperson. I'm trying to get them to live like have some perspective and balance in their life so they can be all over the place. Are you feeling the same thing where you're up against this narrative out there, and it's like, God, at what point is this thing going to settle down a little bit?
Well, you say who's driving the bus? Who's driving the bus is who's always been driving the bus. It's business. Business is driving the bus. That's why I'm putting all my eggs in the business bucket. I'm not tackling politics. I don't get into any of those conversations. For me, business has a higher purpose. Business is the moment you set up shop someplace in a community and you start consuming resources to produce a thing, you are bigger than whatever it is that you're doing. You are an employer. You are a psychological safety net. You are a resource. You are a teacher. You become all of these things, and it's just money left on the table when you don't embrace the role that you have. You could have. I talk about in the book, Be a General Leader, Not a Boss. I talk about one idea for the community that companies could easily lead into. Think about the fact like this. If you work at a corporation and you know there's a lot of small businesses around in your community, why don't you, rather than doing the typical corporate social responsibility, which is go, you know, build a school or paint houses or build houses in the community, why don't you actually have your finance department go out and teach people about accounting and finance? Why don't you have your marketing people go out and spend a day with small companies, small businesses, and teach them about market research and how do you really do digital marketing? Why don't you have your HR department talk about modern ways of hiring and onboarding employees? You have a transferable skill set to the community that can do great good, that is 100% free and will make everybody feel better. It's just that simple. When you embrace the higher purpose of an organization, then you can really begin to tap into all these uncovered opportunities that have been laying there all this time. And whoever picks them up, that's who's going to be driving the bus in the future.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer, especially if the business has to have a purpose. If your purpose is only to make money or for the shareholders to make money, then it's probably hard to have that creative thinking, right? You know,
You can't innovate. You won't innovate. You know, the more, what do we see? The richest people in the world are the most risk averse in the world. They only go after sure things. That's why the rich get richer. Because when they invest, they know they're going to get a return. When we invest, we're betting, we're gambling. When they invest, they're the casino owner. They know which machines are broken in the casino. They know they're going to get a payout. They're guaranteed not to lose.
Yeah.
We're not playing the same game. So that's what we're talking about here, is that they, you know, they're fundamentally, the higher up you get, the more wealth you accumulate, the more risk averse you become. Which is not unlike people who are at the bottom level, who are very risk averse. You have the top of risk averse and the bottom of risk averse. In the middle is innovation, societal change, and improvement of everything.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and I'll let you get the last word. I don't know about you, but for me, the last year and a half, as challenging as it's been, I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. I feel like the opportunities are tremendous for everybody. For those that are willing to learn and listen and step back and really think creatively about what life could be for them. I think it's huge. So are you feeling that as well? Are you looking at today and the future through an optimistic lens?
100%. But I just think that the key message here is that the traditional paths are wearing down, and there's something else is going to happen out of this. I don't know what it is, but this, you know, go to school for 12 years, go to college, get a job, stay there. That is nearly extinct. And then the millennials, which were the bounce around, that is almost nearly extinct. I think we're going to come into the world of I have a main job and I have a side hustle or three. And because I have a side hustle or three, you know, you don't have that level of control over me, over my time, over my lifestyle, over my, you know, my commitment. So you better be bringing purpose. You better be bringing something higher in terms of that, because, you know, the side hustles that I'm working on are giving me the money.
Yep.
I'm doing okay financially. The question is, you know, what is my life going to be about? What is the meaning to it going to be? So I think that now we're going to begin seeing that we can also begin pursuing that higher ideal, and that's what I'm really excited about. Which is why, you know, I always bet on people. I always bet on people. I bet in the good in us over the bad in us. When I hear the volume turned up, I know that we're making progress on the other side, and we just got to stick to it. People like you and me, everybody else listening on the call, we can make a difference. You know, I sign my autographed copies of my book with "You are the force." Each of us is a force for positivity or negativity. Be a force for positivity, and then we'll get to where we want to get to.
Yeah, I bet there's part of you that you've got your training and coaching business, but podcasting and writing, I'm sure it all rounds out your life. You're always you, whatever channel you're choosing, you're putting it out there.
Yeah.
And I think we got to get to that point. These side hustles. I did a podcast in the spring with somebody down in Georgia, Jazzy. I think her last name was Williams. It's escaping me, but she talked to me all about this, and I've started to see more of that in my life with people I know, and they're just doing things they love to do. And I hope at some level people listen to this and, you know, get an idea and then start it on their own. I'll give you the last word, Omar. You know, you want the book, where to get it, message you want people to hear. You can finish us up.
All right, so Amazon.com, please support the books. I have 3 books on Amazon right now. Leaderboard, The DNA of High Performance Teams, The Servant Leader's Manifesto, and Be a Jedi Leader, Not a Boss. You'll get something different from each of those 3 books. So please follow me on Amazon. Go to my website, www.omarlharris.com. If you're looking for a speaker, www.jedileader.com is my speaker's website. You can book me there. And I think that, you know, my message is, as just what I just said, I mean, look towards being a positive force in the world. You know, when you see someone around, you try to do something for them without asking for anything in return. And the more you do that, the more you will understand the power of altruism and how it really fuels you, and how it transforms your outlook and your possibilities in your life. So if we all do that as individuals, when we become leaders, we'll do the same thing, and then we can make a great deal of progress happen.
Omar Harris, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my friend. Great talking to you. Go Pats, go Steelers, and we'll chat soon.
Let's see how the season plays out. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir. All right, take care. Thanks. Bye.